I had just turned 37 last week. Birthdays were no longer fun for me. Not only because I was getting older, but also because my chronic illness tended to strike at the worst moments. This year was no different. The day after my birthday, which I spent alone with a pizza, I had to return to the clinic for a checkup and some rehabilitation to help with the pain. The clinic always gave me a mix of comfort and sadness. It had white walls, smelled of disinfectant, and the staff tried hard to keep a positive attitude. I knew the staff well enough to remember most of their names. While waiting, I looked around the room and saw Ethan again. He was the very handsome nurse who had been part of my care team on and off for the past year. He had dark hair, a friendly smile, and eyes that made you believe he truly cared. He walked straight toward me. "Elena, I didn't expect to see you so soon. Is everything okay?" His voice showed concern and something else I couldn't identify. "Just the usual checkup," I said, trying to sound relaxed, even though my stomach was doing flips. Ethan laughed. "All right, let's get you registered. I'll take care of you today." The way he said, "I'll take care of you," made my heart race with all kinds of possibilities. We walked to the examination room, and I noticed how other patients, especially younger women, looked at him. It seemed I wasn't the only one captivated by Ethan. While checking my vital signs, his touch was professional yet gentle. "Your blood pressure is a bit high. Are you stressed about something?" "You could say that," I admitted, looking away. "Just life, you know." Ethan nodded while noting it in my file. "You need to relax, Elena. You push yourself too hard." "That's easy for you to say," I replied, a little sharper than I intended. "Not everyone can afford to relax." Ethan stopped writing and looked at me with a serious expression. "I understand. You're always here, always fighting. When do you give yourself time for you, or for someone else?" The intensity in his eyes surprised me. "What do you mean, Ethan?" I asked. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I see you, Elena, not just the patient or the woman always fighting something. I see you, and I like what I see." Suddenly the room felt too small and his presence too close. I swallowed hard, trying to think clearly. "Ethan, with my condition, I can't." "I don't care about your condition," he interrupted firmly. "I care about you, the real you, not just medical records and doctor visits." It was overwhelming and happened too fast. Part of me wanted to run, but another part, one I had ignored for a long time, wondered what it would be like to let someone in and not be alone. From that day at the clinic, Ethan and I started spending more time together. It was no longer just medical appointments. We went out to dinner, watched movies, and took long drives. Things I hadn't allowed myself to enjoy in a long time. He made everything feel easy and fun. Even a walk in the park felt exciting with him. One afternoon, about 6 months after that deep conversation at the clinic, we were at my house, relaxed on the sofa with takeout after a long week. I was laughing loudly at one of Ethan's jokes when he suddenly became serious. "Elena, I need to ask you something." His tone made me stop laughing. He took a deep breath, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a small box. My heart started beating fast. "Elena, these past months with you have been the best of my life. I know it's fast and maybe a little crazy, but I don't want to wait. Will you marry me?" His voice was firm, but I could sense a touch of nervousness. I looked at him, then at the ring in the box, and back at him. "Ethan, I don't know what to say." "Say yes." He smiled with that charming smile that had won me over from the beginning. I took the box, opened it, and saw the ring. It was simple, beautiful, and perfect. "Ethan, I love you, I really love you. But if we're going to do this, we'll do it my way." "Anything," he said quickly, "whatever you need." "I want a prenuptial agreement," I said directly. His face didn't change, no surprise, no anger. Just a calm, expectant look. "If something happens to me, everything I have goes to you. But if we separate..." Ethan interrupted. "Of course, I don't care about your things, Elena, I only want you." It was in that moment I knew my answer. "All right then, yes, I'll marry you." The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise after a long dark night. He slipped the ring on my finger and we kissed. A mark of our spontaneous but genuine commitment. We didn't wait long. The wedding was a few weeks later. A simple ceremony at the civil registry with just him, me, his sister Valeria, and her husband. It felt strange planning a wedding without the usual details. No big dress, no long guest list, just the basics. But it felt right. With Ethan we signed the papers, exchanged rings, and that was it. We were married. As we left the registry, Valeria threw some confetti and laughed, shouting congratulations. Life with Ethan began like something out of a fairy tale. Or at least what I imagined a fairy tale would be. He left his nursing job, saying he was tired of caring for sick people every day because it drained him. I didn't mind much. The restaurant was doing well, and I enjoyed having him around more often. During the first months, Ethan was like the husband from old romance novels. He cooked incredible meals and kept the house spotless. Our dinners were grand events with candles, fine china, and soft music in the background. I felt like a queen. But then things started to change. It was subtle at first. I would come home and he was shut in his office. The room he had claimed for himself right after we got married. He said he needed space to handle household matters, bills, and so on. Love, dinner is in 20 minutes, he used to say without even coming out to greet me properly. One afternoon I came home from the restaurant feeling really stressed. It had been one of those days. The supplier messed up our order. The chef was late. And the waitress quit in the middle of her shift. I wasn't in the mood for anything extra. I walked in expecting the usual, dinner ready and the table set. But Ethan wasn't in his office. The house was unusually quiet. I went to the kitchen and found a note on the refrigerator. Ordered pizza. Too tired to cook. Upstairs. That was all. No personal touch. No, see you soon. Just a note. It was more than I expected. I threw my bag on the table, feeling frustrated, and ate the cold pizza right there in the kitchen, completely alone. A couple of days later I decided to talk to him about it. He was in his office again with the door slightly open. I knocked and pushed it open. He was on the computer and didn't even turn to look at me. "Hey, can we talk?" I asked, leaning on the doorframe. "Sure, what's up?" he said without looking away from the screen. "It's about the other night and the last few weeks. You've been distant. Is everything okay?" He minimized what was on his screen and finally turned to me. "Yeah, everything's fine. I just have a lot on my mind. You know." "Like what?" I took a step closer, curious. "Just things, household stuff, bills, that kind of thing." It sounded like an excuse. "Ethan, you know you can talk to me, right? If something is bothering you." He interrupted with a wave of his hand. I said it's nothing. Don't worry about it. But of course I couldn't help worrying. It wasn't like him to shut me out. That night dinner was quiet. He had cooked, but it felt unenthusiastic. No candles, no music. We ate mostly in silence. I don't usually get home early because of the chaos at the restaurant. But that day something made me return early. Maybe a hunch or just luck. When I walked through the door, I was surprised to hear noises in the kitchen. I found a middle-aged woman humming while chopping vegetables. "Who are you?" I asked, clearly surprised. The woman turned, looking a bit startled, then smiled. "Oh, hello, you must be Mrs. Vargas. I'm Carmen. I've been helping around here for about a year, doing the cooking, cleaning, and other housework. Ethan hired me because he said it was too much for him to handle alone." That was new to me. "I see. Well, keep doing what you're doing, Carmen. I need to figure something out." Carmen nodded and returned to her work. I left the kitchen with my mind racing. If Ethan wasn't at home managing things like he said, where was he spending his time? I needed answers and I wasn't going to find them by sitting still. I took out my phone and called a detective agency I had heard about. It was time to discover what my husband was really doing. A few days later the detective had some news. News I didn't expect. Though I was somewhat relieved. There was no other woman. But Ethan was gambling, spending money at casinos and accumulating debts. When Ethan came home that night, I was waiting with the detective's report in my hand. His face fell when he saw my expression. "Elena, what's wrong?" he asked, placing the keys on the table. "Where have you been spending our money?" "Ethan," my voice was calm, maybe too calm. He turned pale, avoiding eye contact. "What do you mean?" "Gambling, casinos, debts. Does that sound familiar?" I moved the report. He sat down, hiding his face in his hands. "I was going to tell you. I just needed to fix things first." My patience was running out. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It started small. I thought I could win back what I lost. He fell silent, looking defeated. I took a deep breath. This isn't how I imagined our life. You need help, Ethan. Professional help, and you're going to get it. Or this ends. I pointed between us. He looked up with tears in his eyes. I'll do anything. Elena, please help me, just this once. I promise I'll stop. I'll go to treatment. All right, but this is the last time. You'll sign a receipt for every cent spent to pay these debts. And you'll receive treatment. I was firm and determined. The following weeks were a whirlwind. I paid 60,000 pesos in debts. Ethan signed the receipt and began his treatment. It was hard to watch him struggle. But I felt we were progressing, and maybe this nightmare was just a bump in our road together. A couple of months after Ethan's gambling problem was revealed and his recovery seemed to be going well, life started returning to a routine. One night while we were on the sofa watching some forgettable TV show, Ethan turned to me with an expression I couldn't fully understand. Elena, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we talk about having a child. He said it carefully, his eyes searching mine for a reaction. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. We had discussed this before, long before marriage. And he knew about my condition. Ethan, you know I can't. My doctors have always been clear about the risks. A pregnancy could be dangerous for me. My body might not handle it. He nodded, but there was something strange in his gesture, almost like relief, which made me uncomfortable, but I pushed that feeling aside. We need an heir, Elena, someone to continue after us, he said as if he had rehearsed the speech. An heir? I laughed, perhaps a bit more sharply than intended. We're not in the Middle Ages, Ethan. It's just us, and my restaurant isn't a kingdom. But he wouldn't let it go. During the following days he kept bringing up the topic with increasing insistence. One afternoon I received a call from his sister Valeria, who is an obstetrician at the clinic where I sometimes receive treatments. Elena, Ethan tells me you're hesitant about having a child. You should reconsider. With today's medical advances, it's perfectly safe. Safe, I responded. Valeria, you've seen my medical files. You know safe is a relative term for someone like me. I was standing in my kitchen, holding the phone to my ear, trying to stay calm. Everyone thinks they're the exception. Sometimes you have to think about more than just yourself, she replied. Egoistic, really? We're talking about my life. My health, I answered, anger rising as the phone trembled in my hand. Valeria didn't apologize. Instead she ended the call, leaving me in tense silence. When Ethan came home that night he found me still upset. What's got you so worked up? He asked, setting his keys on the table. Your sister called. She has very strong opinions about us having a baby, I said without looking at him, while stirring the pot on the stove with more force than necessary. We're married, Elena. It's about what both of us want. And I want a child, he said in a sharp tone. And I want to stay alive. Ethan, that should matter more, I replied, showing my frustration. The argument went in circles without resolving anything. During the following weeks things were tense. Dinners were silent and our conversations brief. I felt a growing gap between us, filled with unspoken words and frustrations. I remember that day clearly, bright and sunny but with a cold air that gave me an uncomfortable feeling. I arrived home earlier than usual and found the apartment in a whirlwind of activity. Ethan, his sister Valeria, her husband, and a lot of boxes were in the middle of my living room. Elena, good, you're here, Valeria said with a cold, professional voice. We're moving in. This is Ethan's apartment now and you need to leave. I stared at them, trying to understand what was happening. What are you talking about? Valeria, this is my home. Ethan stepped forward, looking serious and severe. Elena, I can't take it anymore. You've been controlling and degrading me for years. I've had enough. His words hit me hard. Controlling? Degrading? Ethan, what are you talking about? Yes, Elena, it's always been about what you want and need. I've been like a servant here, he said, his voice rising. Cooking, cleaning, taking care of you, and all I get in return are insults. Valeria added, my husband and I have seen how you treat him. It's time for Ethan to defend his own interests. Ethan handed me a stack of papers with a mix of anger and strange satisfaction on his face. I've filed for divorce, Elena. I'm also asking for compensation for years of emotional work and abuse. You'll hear from my lawyer. Instead of reacting with anger, I felt a strange calm. I looked around the apartment, at Ethan and the others, and realized there was nothing left for me here. All right, Ethan, you'll hear from my lawyer too. I went to our bedroom, now my bedroom, and started packing a suitcase. In less than an hour I was driving away from the apartment. the life, and the people who had turned against me. I headed to the place I had always planned to go if things went wrong. The luxurious house in the exclusive neighborhood with a special clinic nearby. This house, bought with the idea that I might need urgent care someday, was my true refuge. As I passed through the gates of the neighborhood, the security guards gave me a familiar nod. A small comfort on such a chaotic day. Inside my house I walked through the bright, spacious rooms, each designed for comfort and care. A stark contrast to the cold, calculating place I had just left. I sank into the plush sofa, a piece chosen for days when I needed rest. As I lay there I felt a strange gratitude toward Ethan for revealing his true self before it was too late. I had always been prepared for the possibility of loneliness, and now that foresight was my comfort. A few days later my peace was interrupted by a frantic call from Ethan. His voice was a mix of panic and anger. "You set me up, Elena. This is just a game for you, isn't it?" he shouted when I answered. I couldn't help smiling at the absurdity. "Ethan, if you think we need to talk, come see me. I'm not playing, but we can discuss things." I gave him my new address. When Ethan, Valeria, and her husband arrived, the guards let them in. I watched from the porch as they got out of the car, their faces showing a mix of shock and disbelief at the size of my house. Ethan managed to regain enough composure to confront me. "Your lawyer called," he said, his voice tense with anger. "I have to pay 6,000 pesos in rent for the apartment because you sold it years ago. You planned this from the beginning." I leaned against the doorframe, feeling more bored than worried by his frustration. "Ethan, that apartment was a rental property from a company I manage. You thought it was my personal property, but it wasn't." His face turned red with anger. "But I put time and effort into that place. I deserve compensation. If you don't give me this house, I'll take you to court." Valeria, always supportive, added harshly, "And why shouldn't he? Look at this place. She lives in luxury while we get nothing." I laughed, not out of amusement but pure disbelief. "I bought this house long before I met you, Ethan. It's legally mine and you can't touch it." Valeria was furious and her husband tried to hold her back and lead her to the car. "This isn't over, Elena. We'll get what we deserve," said Valeria. I sighed and pointed to the security guards. "I think it's time for you to leave." As they escorted Ethan and his group out, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief for having protected myself and sadness for the man I once thought I knew and married. The courtroom was tense, filled with murmurs and the sharp smell of stress. I sat upright with my hands clasped, watching Ethan and his lawyer prepare their victim act. "Your Honor," Ethan's lawyer began, "my client has been systematically exploited and emotionally abused by the defendant. He endured years of cooking, cleaning, and continuous emotional degradation. When it was my lawyer's turn, she stood up, capturing everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "this is not a case of exploitation but an attempt to extort my client. A successful businesswoman, we have substantial evidence showing that Mr. Caldwell lied about his contributions and deceived my client about his activities during the marriage. My lawyer called Carmen, the real housekeeper who had been doing all the work Ethan claimed to have done." Carmen approached the stand looking calm and honest. "Could you tell the court about your work?" my lawyer asked. "I was hired by Mr. Ethan Caldwell to handle all household tasks, cleaning, cooking, everything he claimed to have done himself. I was paid from a separate account that Mr. Caldwell managed," Carmen said with a firm voice. "And how often did Mrs. Elena Vargas interact with you about managing the home?" "Never. She believed her husband was handling everything at home as he said," replied Carmen. The courtroom murmured as people realized Ethan's deception. My lawyer then presented the prenuptial agreement that clearly outlined the terms of our marriage and the financial arrangements in case of divorce. "As you can see," she said, "the prenuptial agreement clearly states that if the divorce is initiated under false pretenses, Mr. Caldwell has no right to anything." My lawyer concluded her argument firmly and Ethan's face turned pale. Perhaps he regretted not having read the prenup more carefully. His lawyer fumbled with his notes as his case fell apart. The judge took a moment to review everything before announcing the decision with a definitive tone. "I rule in favor of Mrs. Elena Vargas. The accusations against her are unfounded and the prenuptial agreement is valid. The divorce is granted with no financial compensation to Mr. Ethan Caldwell." Ethan slumped in his chair, clearly defeated. His sister exploded in fury. "You're an idiot. You ruined everything. We could have had it all if you had just convinced her to have a child." A few days later, Ethan appeared at the gates of my community with desperation on his face. Elena, please, I'll do anything. Clean, cook, just let me come back, he begged, his voice breaking. I felt nothing but repulsion seeing the man I once loved reduced to this. Ethan, you need to leave now. You're not welcome here, I said firmly. Security quickly escorted him out while I blocked his number and any other contact. This chapter of my life had ended and I was ready to move forward. My life was mine again and I planned to live it to the fullest. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.